Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Life with Loverly podcast. I'm excited to have on the show today the co-founder and CEO of Estate 5 Media, Lynsey Eaton. Lindsay has been my go-to gal for all things brand deals for the last 3 years, and she's truly been a trusted guide on my Loverly Gray journey. Lindsay's story is so unique, and it includes an accidental blog she started in law school that received unexpected exposure, which resulted in opportunities that she did not see coming. Lindsay ultimately shifted from practicing law to creating her now extremely successful management company. Lindsay's story is inspiring because she reminds us that clarity comes from action, and you have the permission to change course whenever you'd like. You'll also learn a bit about the influencer industry and what exactly a management company does. Lindsay is brave and fun, and she'll inspire you to go full speed ahead at whatever it is you put your mind to. So here's my conversation with Lynsey Eaton. Hi, friends. Welcome back to today's episode of the Life with Loverly podcast. I'm so excited to have Lynsey Eaton from Estate 5 on with me today. How are you, Lynsey?
Hi, I'm good. I'm
so
good.
exciting.
We're rolling into summer, but it's good to see you.
I know. I am so lucky that I got to see you like a month ago. So I feel like we've recently got to spend time together and catch up.
I know.
Which, speaking of, camp was so much fun. I just want to say on the record, literally.
I appreciate that.
I had such a blast.
I forget when we don't see each other that frequently, like how amazing that truly is, you know?
I know.
Yeah.
Well, and you guys have a lot of talent, like obviously all over the country, but in Dallas too. And I'm always jealous of the people that live close by that could pop over, or if they needed something, could like meet with their manager. And so when I am able to spend time with any of y'all at Estate 5, I'm like, oh, I could like do this for a whole other like week, you know, like let's keep it going.
Same. I'm like, compound life, like, okay, like.
Seriously. Oh my gosh. I know. Okay. How crazy is it that I've been with Estate 5 now for, I think this is going on my 3rd year. Like October will be 3 years.
It is wild.
I still feel like it was yesterday that Chris and I came to Dallas and like sat down with y'all for dinner.
I know. It does feel like yesterday to me too. But as they say, like time flies when you're having fun.
It does. It really does.
But no, I mean, it really does. And it's funny because like, even still sometimes like, I'll be like, oh, well, we just started this company. And then I'm like, oh no, wait, it's 8 years old. Like we didn't just start it. Like you can't, that's not called just starting it.
Right. Well, I'm really excited to get into the backstory, and a lot of questions that I have today, I think are going to help so many of our listeners who are either looking for management companies, or B, don't even understand like how influencers like make any money. So I think we're going to answer some questions for some people, which is very exciting.
Fingers crossed.
But before we get in, exactly. So tell me about like, let's go back to like when you were a lawyer in California, and kind of like even your story to become a lawyer, and like which ultimately opened you up to this influencer space. Can you give me a little background on like how we got here?
I will try and give you a little background. And it is
I love this story.
I know. This story is one of those ones where like people ask me frequently, and I'm like, this is just an example of like God's faithfulness, and frankly just like walking through doors that are open for you, because this is not a career path. Like what I'm about to tell you, people will say all the time, they're like, what was your career path? And I'm like, honey, girl, it ain't one. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to call it lucky, because this is beyond luck. But I got my undergraduate degree in English and in retail merchandising, and really thought that like every young woman who was graduating from college in 2005, that I was going to go work at a fashion magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to law school because that's what you would do.
You're like, that felt like the next
That
right
felt
step.
like the next step, but mostly it was just naive decision making. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, which in this day and age, when people ask me about going to law school, I frequently am like, do not go unless you have a plan. Like that is not
Right.
a default. Like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Getting more education and paying for such an expensive degree is not a solution. Like, take some time. I do think law school is great for a lot of people, and obviously it has been great for my story. But being a lawyer was not necessarily great for my story. It was great for me. It was great for my story, but not great.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But I went to law school, became an attorney, but still had this passion. And then, super long story, was an internship credit short of finishing my retail merchandising degree. So I was getting my Bachelor of Art and Bachelor of Science. And once you graduate from the University of Texas with one degree, they basically kick you out. And I was not from a family where they were like, sure, here's all the money in the world to go to college. My dad was very much like, girl, you're done. Like, if you want to finish that other degree, that's on you. And I was already paying for some of my degree at that point, my original degree too. So I didn't have any money. And so I just didn't finish it. But once I graduated from law school and started working, the fact that I was just one internship credit short of this retail merchandising Bachelor of Science just like was a weight on me. So I called my old advisor, and this is right when this was like 08, 09. This was right when like the blogosphere was becoming the blogosphere. Everyone was building blogs. I think you started in.
I was a little bit later.
Okay.
I was not till 2015.
Oh, wow. For some reason, I thought you
Yeah.
were like 12, like 20, like
No.
Instagram days. Okay. So you were.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was a little bit later.
Man, I am dating myself really bad. But just goes to show how long I've been doing this.
Right?
But so I talked to her, and I was like, is there something I can do? I'm like, I'm actually a full-time practicing attorney at this point, but I want to finish this degree. And she was like, you know what? Why don't you just start a blog, talk about being a lawyer in the fashion space, and do that for 6 months, and we'll call it an internship. So that's what I did. In order to get this internship, in order to get this school credit. One thing led to another, and obviously like people picked up and started reading that. It was called Law of Fashion. I think somebody else now uses that name, but this was well in advance of that. And I was getting some press around it, and got on like Refinery 29's like 30 Under 30 in Los Angeles, and like had like a New York Times like business cover, and like all of these things. That it within like a 6 month to a year period that started to be like, this is an interesting space. There obviously no one was making any money at that time. But I did do that while I was practicing law on the side for about like 6 or 7 years, until my husband and I, for his job, were moving to Dallas. And I was very clear that I was like, I'm not going to be an attorney anymore. Like, this is not for me. I'm done. I am an empath. And so nobody calls you when they're happy. And so I just absorbed a lot of negative feelings, and it just was not good for me mentally.
Right.
And so I started working with a girlfriend of mine who was an actress on the WB at the time, and started helping her build out her online portfolios. And I remember going to her and her management being like, hey, this was like back in 2012, 2013, and being like, hey, these are the new celebrities. Like, if you want deals, that you're going to have to transition. You're going to have to, because like Ring My Bell and all of those with Ashley Bell and all these other ones, like they were starting to sort of like develop and like be.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is what we've got to do. And they were like, okay, you guys go do that. That's cute. And so we started her online portfolios, and I worked with her on that and managed some of her licensing deals and associated with the blog for about 5 years. And then in 2017, my business partners and I, Suzanne Drost and Tina Craig, who writes The Bag Snob and is the founder of U Beauty. And we came together and at their insistence, started Estate 5 to basically offer those same services, but to a wider network of talent.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so thankful that you did that. Were there a lot of other management companies at that time?
At the time, I remember distinctly, there was one really big one, which was DBA. They're the original, and they always will be the original. And then there were a few others that were really starting to sprout up. Not nearly what we have right now. Right now, it feels like there's a lot of people in the game.
You can look every direction and there's like a new one.
Yeah. And it feels a little bit like anyone who woke up and they think it's like a good business idea instead of like actually realistically like understanding the space or even understanding how to manage people or what the role of a manager realistically should be. And I think sometimes influencers don't fully understand what the role of a manager should be. Like sometimes they're just like, I just want one because it seems like people that are successful have them. And sometimes it's the right fit for you and sometimes it's not. And I think, the one thing that I pride Estate 5 on, and I won't say that we're better because I think there are other people in the space that also do it really well. But that I pride Estate 5 on is we don't want clients that aren't a good fit for us. We don't just want clients for the sake of having clients. We definitely want people that feel like they are a good fit to our ethos, to what we believe in terms of business and how we run business, that they're going to run their businesses the same way that we would run them, because we're firm believers that you guys are representations of each other. And so if someone's working with us and they have a certain expectation that, and it's our expectation that our influencers are on time and that our influencers are understanding that and have a mutual respect for the business relationship and understanding that there's a person on the other end of that email who has to justify their existence and that we're working together towards one team, one goal, right? And that they're going to work that way. And if someone's not going to work that way, then it may just not be the right fit for us. And that's not necessarily saying that it's a bad thing. It's just that's how we work. And so we wouldn't want to be trying to fit, a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. And I appreciate just like how business minded you guys are and how just professional everybody on your team is, and like that you expect that of your influencers and expect that back of the brands that you work with. I think that it's because so many people are still like influencer, like what do they really do? Like what do they need really help with? And so to have somebody on my behalf reaching out to these brands who's like an extension of my brand, they have to fit the bill. So knowing that you guys value that is really important.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the thing that we slam into people from the very beginning is that it's like, it's essentially what it means to be representing somebody, right? Like it's not just go do your job. Like you are representing someone. And is this how they would represent themselves? Right. Totally. And you get more flies with honey. And we view ourselves as problem solvers. So if an issue is created, then the first thing that my team is trained to do is to start trying to figure out how to solve it and what is a good solution and understanding what both sides need. So that way we can try and get to the end and get there quickly with the least amount of pain and hurt. Because if you try to pretend, granted, we always try to see the problems and prevent them from happening to begin with. But if that's almost impossible for it to always happen.
Right. It's funny. I sometimes refer to myself, or like a situation might happen, I'll refer to myself as, okay, now I'm like going into PR Brittany mode, which is like, how can I like make sure I have the answer to like every possible problem that could come up in whatever we're getting ourselves into.
Yep.
And you have to like kind of have that outlook sometimes, but I try not to live there all the time because it can really quickly take you down. But
it's an emotional struggle for sure sometimes. But I mean, if you've got the emotional intelligence and you've trained yourself in order to figure out how to navigate those, I don't want to call it manipulating because I think that word has such a negative connotation, but in some
right.
ways it is helping people see both sides and finding solutions that actually are beneficial.
Totally.
So
okay, now you own and run Estate 5. You've got 35 employees or maybe even more. How
probably
many
closer
are
to
we at?
40, but yeah,
Okay. And then I know you've got over like 80 clients now.
probably
Where are we
around
at?
100.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Do you think we'll grow past that? I mean, that's not my question exactly, but
I
that's a new
think
question.
my goal at this point, like our goal was actually never to get this big, if I'm being
Yeah.
totally honest. I think that we've never our original goal was to like have 10 clients and like for me to like take care of my kids and like and have
Yep.
some clients and like and it just never works out like that. And not to toot our horn, but realistically to toot our team's horn, it's like they are so good at what they
Yeah.
do that we continually get people referring their friends or referring. So we're not even doing tons of outreach in order to fill spots. We get these incredible clients like yourself from word of mouth. And then those clients generally, unless there's some other reason, stay.
Right.
And so the goal has never been to get as big, frankly, as we are. I don't think that we will. I think we will just to continue to refine our services. My goal is to continue to build this team and make them the best of the best, and to continue to grow them to a point that they are growing as individuals, growing as managers, and then also growing the types of projects that they're working on, growing the types of projects their clients are working on, and really just taking the clients that we have and trying to make them the bigger, better versions of themselves. So I think at this point, like we are at a space to where either we would have to expand exponentially or I still love the concept of being a little bit boutique to where we're able to give so much personal attention to each of our clients. And I would never want to lose that.
Totally. Okay. So let's go back a little bit. So like, obviously you had to start somewhere. Tell me about your first week of Estate 5 officially being open for business. Like, take us back to the beginning.
It's so funny because we got, again, I don't know, I'm going to call it lucky, because I had been in the space for a long time. And I knew a lot of people and had built a lot of relationships separate and apart from any of this. We knew a lot of people. And we didn't know if these people were looking for representation. And because it was early on when there weren't tons of management companies, a lot of people still weren't represented. And week one, I reached out to about 5 people that I loved and respected and felt like we ran our businesses and lives the same. And who I felt like could benefit from the expertise and probably people that I had even been answering questions for. Right. Kathleen Barnes, Ashley Robertson, people that are still clients today, 6-7 years later. And we had conversations with them, and those are our original clients. Ashley Stark-Kinner was friends with Tina Craig. She's still a client. So it's really pretty incredible that within a month or so we had 10 clients, and great clients.
Right. Like, and solid people that are still there, I mean, it's so interesting. I feel like sometimes just the way that like the puzzle starts to like get built And I mean, I know you've said lucky a few times, but it also just feels like it's like fallen into place the way that it was supposed to be without even knowing that this is how it was supposed to be.
Totally. I mean, like I kind of mentioned it before, but it's divine. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
I would be remiss to point to anything else because so much of my story, like you could point back and I could be like, I never would have known, like, this is not what I would have planned. And yet it is so perfectly planned out, and like you just trusted and walked through a door and
Yeah.
showed up, and like the exact right 8 people walked through and said, yes, I trust you. And then those people, beget more people. And like it
Yeah.
just it's from that perspective, if I was ever to like sit down and give a testimony in that regard, like it really is pretty incredible.
Right. Like, yeah, I even think back on like my journey to getting into the influencer space. I mean, I was in like a corporate job in sales, and I think of like all these steps that I didn't even know how to do, that I was just like trying, that got me here, that has like allowed me to touch all these lives or do all these different things. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, sometimes you just don't even know where you're going. Um, and you can get there, and it's such like the journey itself is so great. I don't know.
I tell young kids this all the time, and I call them kids because I'm officially in my 40s, so like I get to call kids in their 20s kids, but they are not. They are young adults and they are incredible human beings. But I tell them this all the time. I'm like, you will never know, like, just wherever you land, learn as much as you can,
Yeah,
because you will never know what is transferable, because you will
totally.
show up in your life. And there are things in my life where I was working. I worked in New York at W Magazine in the closet for a little while. Again, back when that was a thing.
Right.
And there were so many things that I learned about the way publications are run, that when I went to go build our own publication and um, it, build influencers businesses and all of these things that are so, they would feel archaic and unimportant, but they are incredibly valuable because I learned it from it. And it wasn't Condé Nast at the time, but it was Fairchild, and it was a very
Yeah.
large publication, and I just learned those structures, and those structures and processes influence the structures and processes that we have then used, that then we built on for here. And it same thing, like my legal journey, not only I I transfer those skills in terms of like contract
Yeah.
review and like negotiating,
Right.
payment terms and all kinds of things that people wouldn't necessarily have ever considered, in your world, that are super important.
Mhm.
But like the structure of running a law firm, um,
Right.
Estate 5 is built like that. We're built like a law firm. We run like a law firm. Like our accounts are run like a law firm's accounts. We have client trust accounts. We have, like, our finances are run that way. And I have heard so many other, and this is like a complete different tangent that I won't go down, but like so many other management companies that get in trouble because their finances are not run that way,
Right.
because they don't have that experience. And it's
Right.
just, and again, I don't want to say youth or inexperience, but in sometimes, like, you have to know when you are inexperienced in those regards.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what exactly is a talent management company, because I know there's people that don't have any idea. So let's start there. What exactly is a talent management company?
So I have so many fun answers to this, but I will keep it for the sake of your listeners. I've got my elevator answer for
I
the person
know.
on the elevator that doesn't really care. But for the sake of your listeners who might actually care, um, we what I always say is that influencers are running a business, and they are running a very complex media business. Realistically, it's a digital media
Mhm.
marketing business, and sometimes people don't see it that way. They see it as this personality or whatever, but realistically what it is it's digital marketing. And most of those influencers are running that business in a vacuum. And even influencers like yourself who do have teams who help with content and all of these other things, what we do is we take the business side of running that business off of your plate. So all of the things that could frankly get you in trouble because you don't have the experience in running a business, in terms of sending out invoices, following up on those invoices, doing collections, making sure that your money is where it's supposed to be, making sure certain accounts are handled, reviewing the contracts, making sure that those contracts say what you thought they were going to say, making sure that they don't conflict with another contract that you have running down the line, making sure that we're pitching out business that doesn't conflict with business that we have, and that with things that we've got coming up. So to me, it is just simple. The simple answer is we are running the business side of an influencer's business. It is a service. I think there is a massive misunderstanding for influencers who are either new to the space or haven't had management or don't fully understand that they think it is just job creation. And that is absolutely a part of it. Like, it is absolutely our job to work with you to go out and try and get you additional work, because that is part of running the business, right? But that is not all that we do. That is not, I wouldn't even say that that's necessarily, 25% of what we do.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, so much of that is relationship building. So much of that is long-term investment into those relationships. You and I both know cold pitching works about 1% of the time.
Right.
That doesn't mean that we don't still do it. It is valuable, but that is not what we do. Or it's not, we do it.
Like that's not right,
but
that's not it.
Yeah.
Right.
If that's all you're looking for, you do not need a management company.
Right. Okay, so next question, kind of under that, how does a content creator actually make money?
That's a great question. I feel like it's a better one for you, but
I know, right?
But I will start, and then you can follow up.
I'll add on.
But I always say that there are 3 ways that creators make money, and I try and dump, because my other favorite thing, and I'm just going to go ahead and give props to you and all creators. Again, I practiced law for 6 or 7 years. I always say it was one of the hardest times in my life. I was not working as hard as most creators that I know. And I think that there is this massive misconception that you guys are just waking up and people are paying you to show up and be yourselves. And if you are doing it right, and if you are doing and have a platform similar to what you have, that's just not the case.
Right.
People are working endless and tireless hours behind the scenes to create a distribution channel, if you will, that requires a lot of understanding and knowledge and research behind their circulation, behind and we call it your audience, but realistically it's old school circulation numbers for magazines. That's what it is, only with more proven data points. And so it takes just as much work, and sometimes even more, because you have fewer people to do it. And so I just quickly want to put a little plug for you guys and how much work you put in. But because I'm going to simplify these 3 ways that you make money, but I want to clarify that there's a lot that goes into them. The first one is affiliate marketing. It's click to purchase sales, which we actually don't touch. We do use that data in order to make those pitches that we were talking about before, in order to sell an influencer's ability and and quality of their relationship with their platform and with their distribution channel. But that is basically just like a commission that a salesperson would have received in a store, just online. And it's not any different than that. It's payment for the work. And it requires a lot of work. And frankly, and a lot of times is very little pay.
Yeah.
Very little return. But that is the first way. And that can look like through a platform like LTK or ShopStyle or any of these other things. But it can also be a link through a brand specifically. Brands do have some relationships with clients where they do provide like codes, and it is directly related to sales and referrals. So that's the first way. The second way is advertisements, or in the industry, we call them sponsored content. But in reality, what they are is they are ads. It is old school advertisements in a magazine where somebody, but the difference is, and again, this is better for brands, is they are not paying to go have this like massive produced content, and they are getting the influencer to create the content themselves. They are getting a larger distribution channel and a more, proven distribution channel. More than likely, and we require this of our clients, but more likely than not, that client also will only work with brands that we feel like are a good fit. Similar to the way that if you were at Harper's Bazaar, there are going to be ads that are appropriate to be in Harper's Bazaar in order to pay for your experience. But there are ads that are not going to be a good fit for Harper's Bazaar, and they're not going to take their money because you're going to stop reading it,
Right.
So that's the second way. And that is literally just paid for content. The third way is through what I call like licensing fees. And this one is where it gets really complicated because it could cover a large majority of things. Because you could license your name, you could license your likeness, you could license content that you've created. A brand could pay for that and use it to run ads on their part. You could license, you could license all kinds of things. You could create a product and license your name associated with that product. Those are fees that are not directly related to sales, but are more related to the use of your name in a period of time.
So then how would you say a management company helps a content creator make money?
Well, the first part is helping you understand all that and the difference between
Yep. Very true.
And understanding the different rates associated with those things, because I think licensing fees in particular are something that get a little bit tricky, and even brands sometimes don't fully understand the value of those. And then helping you sort of negotiate, because I think one thing, for example, that brands love to do is pop in and be like, I want perpetual usage for something, like, which basically means that they want to be able to use it forever. That is so unnecessary. Like, they're not going to use this forever. Like, perpetual usage is so expensive, and any rate that anyone is going to give for perpetual usage is insane. I understand that they don't, in fact, half the time they don't even use it. So they shouldn't pay for it up front. So we work with them to negotiate a way to be like, hey, like, whenever you're going to use it, just tell me, and then we'll get you a rate. And then if you don't, then you don't. And then all of a sudden the negotiation and understanding what all of those things mean and how to negotiate around it and how they're actually working through content will help you make more money, because instead of the deal dying or you giving away something for free that you shouldn't have given away, we're able to negotiate something that's fair. So I think that's realistically the biggest part is being able to help you understand more some of these areas that feel a little foreign. And in addition to that, also knowing what's going on in the industry, what is standard, when the economy starts to drop, and being like, hey guys, like, actually people aren't paying that anymore. And that may be worth it, but like, people aren't shopping anymore. So it's actually not worth that rate anymore. So think in helping you adjust to that and not being stuck in certain places, and having our finger on that pulse, while simultaneously also knowing when brands are, and I know we've dealt with this, but like when brands are moving on from certain places and when they're going to be and working on those relationships and saying, here's campaigns that are coming down the road, and like doing the due diligence in regards to a lot of those things.
Totally. I mean, and I think like you guys, even just for me, I think so much of Allie and Sadie, who are part of like my team helping, is
That's
just like,
Brittany's manager and her
yes.
coordinator.
And they work at Estate 5,
Yes.
but they just, even like all of the communication they do on their side that I don't even know is happening, so that I don't have to do it, or somebody else on my like local team doesn't have to do it, is such, like, to me, I'm like, whenever a creator is like, I just don't know, like, if it's, worth it to hire a management team, like the percentage, and I'm like, you will not even notice. Like, you will be so happy because you're not the one having to go back and forth. You're not the one having to try to figure all of these things out. So it's such like a huge help and a huge weight lifted off of my shoulders. But to know that like you guys have all this information, you have like, you are training your teams to have conversations a certain way, so that we don't have to.
Oh yeah.
And that we can still reap the benefits of, working with the brands.
Once your business reaches a certain point, like, it's why you hire an accountant. You know what I mean? It's why you hire somebody who specializes in a certain skill, so that way you can be more efficient. It's not so,
Exactly.
and then you make more money because you are better at your job and you are not trying to do something that you are okay at. I'm not saying that you couldn't do these things yourself. You could. Could you do them as well as Allie? Like, probably not.
The answer is no.
Probably not, because she spends all day doing them. But could she go be a content creator? Like, absolutely not. Like, she's cool, but like, she doesn't spend all day doing this, know? And I think that's like, know what you know what you don't know, and like find somebody who's really good at what you don't know, and then like keep it moving. Like, that's how you run an effective and growing business. And like, creators need to treat their platforms like growing businesses. And that is the only way to make more money and to make it long-term.
Absolutely. And I think that's where there's like such a disconnect.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, like, I either think creators kind of like fall into this role, or they want to do it, but then they just like don't even realize what all it entails. And I came from a sales background and like treated it as a sales job, like from day one. And I think that's really something that like helped me set me apart. And so I have a large team like internally on my side, but then also having the support of you guys on your side. Like, I very quickly was like, okay, can't do this all. Need to start outsourcing. I need help. Like, I can teach people some things, but like, I need people to come in who are experts in other things to help me make this successful, which is how you grow a business.
Absolutely. Spend money to make money.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it can be very scary.
It's scary.
To take that step. But once you do, I mean, I just feel like I can't even imagine not being with y'all, or not, I'm like, Allie, I hope you're like with me for literally the rest of my life.
I think she's planning on it. She's pretty clear that she's like moving in.
I know.
She talks to me about it frequently. So.
Yeah. I'm like, listen, please do not ever break us up.
No. We have, what's funny is we've got so many clients, and some of them that have been with us forever. And there's one in particular, and I won't name drop her, but like, she was taught, I mean, like, it was a long slog to get her, and you probably know who this is, to sign. And then after she did, she was like, I do not want to see an email ever again in my life. She was like, in fact, I don't even want to hear emails from you. You just tell me what to do and when to do it. I don't want to know. And part of it is just like the emotional burden associated with reading other people's criticisms and complaints and like requests and whatever. And whereas like half the time we know your problems, so we just like deal with them on the back end, and we only come to you whenever it's something that you're actually going to have to like address or deal with. And like, we can deal with as much as we possibly can. So that way you're not, and it's not somebody in your office who's like, oh, Brittany, like they didn't like it.
Right. Exactly. Like, I feel like that's different, but yeah, there's so many benefits. I guess, okay. Another question What would you say like a typical deal might look like? Somebody like kind of the process a little bit because I
Sure.
know, typical is
I was about to say the first thing I'd say is there's no such thing as typical,
I
but
know, right? I guess just kind of giving them an idea of like, hey, a brand reaches out, like kind of what's the like life cycle of a deal or a project?
so a super cut and dry, because no deal is the same.
Yes, very true.
No deal is the same. And there are always going to be deals that are more complicated and have more components to them. And like some of them are not even going to be deals for advertisements, but they're going to be for licensing or commercials, or we've got people on TV shows. And like, so let's just
Yeah.
pretend like we're talking about just like a typical influencer
Yes.
contract for
Like
an
this brand wants to work with me for this month. What
what
happens
does it look like?
next?
So they'll reach out to the influencer or they'll reach out to us if it's somebody that we've worked with and they're looking for somebody new. Either way, the influencer loop them in with us. Our partnerships team will loop with them in with the manager that's appropriate. And then we will start realistically trying to figure out what the scope of the campaign looks like. We'll start trying to figure out, and this is something that I think a lot of influencers skip. They run straight to the money and how much it is. And like, because a lot of times brands hide the ball and they say that they're looking for something and they're actually looking for something else.
Right.
And so then you will provide them a quote and then you are stuck with that quote. And they end up kind of negotiating around you. So we start with, and that's not their fault. I don't think they're doing it to be malicious. I think in many ways, like they don't recognize that there are differences in things. And then if you don't clarify, this is like the first thing you learn in law school is like, let's get as much information on the table before we start building a contract.
Yeah.
But so that's how we start. We start trying to, and we have like some bullet points on our side that our managers are required to get from the brand before we even start quoting. But we try and pull as much information out of the brand as possible in terms of like not just what the scope is, but what the usage is, like what the creative is going to look like any additional requirements that are kind of like random, like what are their expectations, what's their KPI, like as much as we can find out from them about what they're looking for without being obnoxious. And then we work with the influencer to make sure that this is something that they actually want to do. A lot of times the answer is like, oh, now I did want to work with that brand, but now that I see that they only want me to wear neon orange and dance through and post it, and then they want to buy it and they're going to use it in a commercial, like that no longer is interesting to me. Like, never mind.
Right.
But more often than not, it is a fit because we wouldn't have gotten that far. And then we start negotiating prices and rates. Once we agree on something with the influencer's input, we don't ever make decisions behind. This is something that is different for us than a lot of management companies. I won't say everyone because there are a lot of people that work the way we do, but we will not make a decision. Money is money on behalf of the influencer without their input. But once we've agreed on a rate, then we will move to contracting, and then we will work with the brand on making sure that the contract reflects the deal points that we negotiated in the emails, which sometimes it's not the case. And so
Right.
then we negotiate that. Then we work with, once we kind of get it in a place that we think is good, then we work with the influencer, make sure they have no issues, they contract, and then we move into the production. That's where the influencer really takes over and starts to shine.
Mm-hmm.
All that up to that point is really a lot of heavy work on our end and not a lot of work on their end. Just a little bit of communication. They start building out the content according to the brief. There are some times whenever we have to go back and get clarifications. We send through approvals. Sometimes there are reshoots or things. And sometimes, like, this is the other thing, like, influencers will send their content to us and we review it first and we'll say, hey, this has never happened to Brittany, but hey, Brittany, like, girl, you were supposed to wear neon orange. You didn't wear neon orange. You got to go do it. And so then she's like, oh my God, like, you're right. Like, I'm a human being. Like, let me go reshoot it and like wear neon orange. And then we will send it. So that way there's a set of eyes that we're checking. And then we see it through to fruition once it's over and posted, and we make sure that it's posted and all of the assets and the analytics are sent over to the brand after the fact. Then we follow up and send invoices and collect the money and make sure that the influencer's paid out. The one thing that I think is incredible from an influencer standpoint, working with a management company, is you get one 1099 the end of the year, and
Yeah.
it's from
Oh
us
my gosh. I
instead
know.
of
It's great.
7,000 from every brand under the sun. Makes our accounting a complete and total nightmare.
Right.
But we take care of all of that. And so, yeah, I think that's
I mean,
it.
so many points from what you just explained make it so worth it to work with a management company, in my opinion, because I was very successful before I had any
Very
management. And I was those things that you guys were doing is what was weighing me down. It
correct.
was like as soon as I like got going with y'all, I was like, let's go. Like I can put out so much more content.
Puts
We were
the
just
joy
able to
back
do
into it.
more. Yes.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't being bogged down by the things that I didn't like. I mean, and it's funny because my husband, Chris, who he works with me on the back end and he like does all the business side of things. And I always like say to people, I'm like, if he wasn't here, like I wouldn't like I don't know how we would be filing taxes. I don't know how we'd be doing payroll. I don't know how we'd be doing any of these things because to me, I'm like, my like area is creating content, styling outfits. Like I need other people to help me make this work. And so you guys have taken such like a chunk off my plate so that I can keep thriving. And so to me, I'm just like, why wouldn't anybody want that experience as an influencer and creator who like needs help? I mean, you just
Totally.
listed out so many benefits as to why somebody should consider hiring management.
Totally. Totally. I mean, I think that there are some times whenever it doesn't make sense, like
Of
if you're
course.
not doing enough work, you know what I mean? That we're going to be doing so much work that it's not, there's a push and a pull.
Yeah.
So I think there are times whenever it doesn't make sense or whenever, and it also comes down to like which management company you hire too, like
Yeah.
making sure that their style is similar to your style. Like how do they
Totally.
work?
Right.
Because they are representing you and are managing your relationships, and do they view it that way?
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Okay. So your friend Jedediah Jenkins gave you some words of wisdom in a conversation years ago about Estate 5 when you found yourself justifying the influencer industry. Tell me a little bit about this conversation and how it changed your perspective.
that's so funny. I was wondering if this was going to come up. um, so at the time, so Jedediah um, was my law school roommate and a very good
Mhm.
friend. And while we don't see each other enough, like he has built this incredible brand himself, and he is just like a solid human being. Like he's the type of person that when you're around him, like, and I think you can tell this just from following him on the internet, but like when you're around him, like you want to pick him up and put him in your pocket and have him with you always because something about him is so infectious. Um, and I had not talked to him for a while, and he had messaged me. I will forever remember this. And he at the time, I want to say, was working with Invisible Children, which obviously was like this incredible cause. And he was like doing these incredible things, and he always has been doing incredible things. And
Mhm.
and when I quit practicing law, I had this really big identity crisis where I felt like I needed to justify leaving.
Mhm.
That it wasn't because I couldn't hack it. Like I could hack it. I just didn't want to. And there was a
Right.
difference. And I needed people. I really was worried that people like didn't understand that. And then when I started working with my friend in the influencer space, like I really saw this being the next big thing, and I saw a lot of value in it. And it was giving me a lot of life to be an entrepreneur, really, which was never something that I like ever saw myself as, and to be building something, but it felt very frivolous,
Mhm.
especially talking to someone who was working at Invisible Children. Um, and I remember talking to him, and I had found like a journal entry or something. And I was moving houses. This was literally in 2016 or 2017. I remember it to the day. And I texted him, it must have been 2016. I texted him and I said, look at this journal entry I found about you and I. Like, how incredible is this? And so then we started talking about how things were going. And I was like, oh, well, I'm doing this thing. And like, I get it. Like, it's just like influencer, but like, I'm so sorry. Like it is what it is. And then he was like, Lindsay, stop. He was like, stop. Frivolity is important too. And he was like, it is important for our mental health. It is important he was like, there is substance in your frivolity. You do not need to justify it to anyone. Like you can, and then he used the Sophia Coppola quote, which is basically that you can be a person of substance and still, I can't say it, but like you can be a person of substance and still relish in frivolity. And he was like, that does not make you inconsequential. It doesn't make you any less.
Right.
In fact, it makes you more, and you are important, and what you are doing is needed. Like if everyone was sitting around doing what I'm doing, he was like, what a world we would live in. He was like, it would be impossible. And it was so impactful for me, I think, as a person who is type A and an achiever and who does I wouldn't say that I'm a person who really measures myself or my self-worth against what others think, but it was a little bit of a personal crisis I was going through at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really impactful for him to basically say like, no, you give yourself some space to be yourself and to sort of like relish in that and like recognize that there is value in all of our contributions.
Totally. Well, and like, you are helping people while it may seem, frivolous, but like what you are doing and similar to like what I'm doing by trying on outfits, we are helping people in a completely different realm.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, when I graduated college, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but in my head, I was like, I want to help people. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know. And I got a sales job and like helped people get jobs, helped clients like hire. And I did that for a little while. And then like, I look at what I do every day is like, I am helping somebody on the internet feel good about themselves, try a new product or whatever. And yes, maybe it's not like, saving children in Africa or doing something that to somebody else might be like deemed more helpful. But, I think.
But maybe you're supporting the person who is out there saving the children, like doing whatever and preventing them from having to go spend their energy to find those things. So we're all interconnected.
It all goes.
We're
exactly.
all interconnected, and there is value in all of it. And so it is pretty powerful when you think about it that way.
I think it's a great reminder too, because sometimes like in this space, people can be mean, people can send mean comments, they can immediately will pull you down because you're out there trying something new or living your life or doing whatever. And it's so easy to be like, take what people negative comments and like take them to heart. And I feel like you don't have to do that.
It's so funny. This is like minor anecdote and then I will skip on. But like yesterday I took my kid, talking about mental state and trying to develop like your worldview. But like I took my kids to the movie yesterday. My son had not been feeling very good. He was no longer sick, but he was still super tired. And like, it was Father's Day. And like the greatest gift that I could give my husband is to give him a break. And so I took my kids to the movie and we went to go see Inside Out 2, and all of the seats were taken except for the 2 seats there was a single seat that had been taken, 2 seats on one side and 1 seat on the other side. And it was in the back row and sort of in the center. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'll just get those 3 seats, and I'm sure whoever that person is, they can just move over 1 seat and then we can all sit together. No big deal. So we get to the theater and I walk up to this young woman who's maybe like 28 years old. And she's there by herself. And I walked up to her and I was like, hey, I'm so sorry. Like, we had to buy these seats. Would you, and I'm here with like these 2, frankly, like children. And
Right.
8 and 6. And I'm like, would you at all mind like moving over just one seat into this other seat that's basically a single seat instead of a double? Um, so we can sit together. And she was like, I paid for the seat. I'm sitting in it. And I was like, okay. And like in that moment, like I felt trolled. I'm not gonna lie. Like I felt
Right.
like I was, and my instinct was to get really upset. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it. I sat myself down. I started to calm myself down. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe she has some sort of social thing where she has to sit in that same seat every time. Maybe she
Right.
has some sort of, you know what I mean? And like, this is going to be really annoying for her because now I've got two children, one on either side, and like they're screaming and like reaching for popcorn over her and like whatever. I mean, like maybe
You're
she's
kind of
regretting this.
like, your fault here.
Yeah, maybe she's regretting this choice, but like, I'm going to do my best to be a good example of grace,
Yeah.
and to give her some, and because what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit back and be like, you know what? Like, if this is her approach to life, I bet her life is really hard,
Yeah.
and mine's really not at the moment. So I'm going to give her some grace. And I think it
Yeah.
is a little bit of that same mindset with people that are so ragey on the internet is that, you know what? Like sometimes I look at them and I'm like, God, like for you to have written that down, like taken the time in your day to have written that down about somebody, like
Yeah.
your life must be really hard. And
Yeah. Or
I'm
like,
going to give you a little bit of
gosh,
grace.
like,
Yeah, like
yeah.
what's going on up there? Like I'm going to give you a little bit of grace because man, it must be really hard to go through life feeling that way about other people.
Honestly, I feel like once I adopted that outlook in responding back to people or like not even responding,
Yeah,
at
letting it
times
go.
and just kind of like really changing my perspective, and it really helped me in a lot of areas of my life of just like,
Totally.
okay, like I can control how I'm going to react, and it's not a reflection of me. Like they
Mm-mm,
are having this outburst because of something they are dealing with or something,
totally.
and it's once I've realized that, I was like, okay, I'm going to keep doing what I am good at, what I am here for, and I can't control some of those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can take a second to get there. Because it's easy to want to just burst out or respond back.
Or not listen to real feedback, right? Because
Right.
sometimes the feedback is good feedback. And it's like I can't just automatically go to the place of defensive, you know?
Right.
And because like we are all here to be refined, like refine me all day. But don't be
Yeah.
disrespectful.
Exactly. Like there's a difference.
There's a difference.
Um, so I know you just mentioned your kids, but how do you balance your personal life and your business life? And like, how do you, kind of do it all?
You don't. It's funny. You
Right.
don't. I was talking, we had I tried to for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost like pushed myself into like, I mean, it's impossible. And I think the minute that your mental state, we realize that something is always going to have to give, the better off you
Yep.
are. Like, I think we are sold this lie that like we can do it all. And yes,
Right.
like every option that you want is an option for you, but you can't do it all
Mm,
at the same time. Like you just can't.
right.
And we had an International Women's Day thing here, and it was like very weird to admit this in front of our team. But I also think it's important for us to set good examples of women in a workplace who are working with a family, and what that looks like. And somebody asked me this question, and I told them the same answer, which is like something has always got to give. And in your life, you are going to have to pick priorities. You're going to have to decide what your priority is. So when those things do conflict, what are you going to choose? And for
Mm-hmm.
me, it is always my family. And so there will be times when I need to be somewhere for work and my kids need me. And I will always pick my kids. And that is just,
Yeah.
people need to know that about And luckily we've built an incredible team to where we can pick up after each other and fill in where other people need to fill in and support each other through those things. And so I'm very lucky in that regard. And so I don't want to dismiss that in the sense that I also have a partner who allows me that luxury, and who supports that and who also believes in that same approach. So those things are, but without fail, like, to me, the most important thing for me is that there will be times of conflict. And when those things conflict, I will always choose my family. I will choose my husband. I will choose my children. I will choose to show up.
Yeah. Well, and I think like once you get to a point where you can decide that and you can make that clear decision no matter what, and you have like things set in place to where you're so confident in that, whatever that decision might be, or
That's
whatever
right.
the two conflicting things might be,
Right.
like then you get clarity around that, like there's no question anymore. But
That's right.
sometimes it takes a little like pre-work and a little bit of like, you got to set some things up to get there.
100%. Like, to be very clear, I'm very confident in that right now. I am 41 and a half years old, my friend. Like, I spent a solid 40 years not being confident in that and not being able to figure out that balance and getting to a place where I could set those things up. I think the only thing that I would say is exactly your point. I would have started that process a lot earlier. I would have recognized that that was my priority earlier and gotten to a point where I was setting up processes and procedures in order to set myself up for success in those moments of conflict instead of trying to think that I could do it all.
Right. I think that is like that's important part too, is like people need to know how to like get to that. Cause like everybody wants like that easy answer on the end, but it's like, that's it. You have to like commit to that and figure out how are you going to stay there?
Right.
And what are those things that are going to be set up in place? And I mean, it's a great feeling once you're there.
Right. Oh, and once you found it, you're like, and don't get me wrong, it's not a great feeling whenever I have to be like, I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Right. Totally.
Like, I can't do that. But when I look at the investment that I made, I know it's the right one. And that is a good feeling, and not feeling bad for very long about not doing the thing or whatever it was.
Totally. I totally get that. Well, we are going to wrap this up. Before we do, one question that I ask everybody at the end of an interview is, what is the most meaningful act of kindness that someone has extended to you that has had a lasting impact on your life?
So I was prepared for this. I was preparing for this. And it is very, very hard to pick one. But I am going to pick my husband, because I think there are so many, and I'm going to wrap it up as if it's one act of kindness, but in reality, he is kind to me in this way every day. But he loves me unconditionally, and he has made the conscious choice to love me through really hard stuff. And he has made the conscious choice. When we said I do, he meant it. And he has shown up that way every day. And I think any person who knows what that feels like knows how much of an impact that can have on your daily life, because I have a place of security. I can be confident in him. I can be confident in what he is doing when he is not with me. I can be confident in who I am at work. I can be confident whenever I want to quit my job as an attorney and go do that, he is not going to be angry with me about that. I can be, there's so many choices and decisions that I have made in my life that I did not have to have anxiety over because of a choice that he made to give me grace. And so I know that is not like a single act. That is an act that is ongoing and
every day,
and happens every single solitary day. But I am going to pretend like the one time that he offered it to me on our wedding day is
Yes, that's the one.
that was the one.
I love that. Yeah, that is honestly like, you're so lucky too that he shows up in that way for you, because then it allows you to thrive.
100%.
You know, that allows you to support all these people that you support and teach and grow and all of the things, you know,
Couldn't do it without him.
and that wouldn't exactly.
And he's not perfect. Like, do not get me wrong. And we are not perfect. I do not want to give off any vibe that we are like this, like if anyone's ever around us, they're like, oh my God, you guys bicker like crazy. Like, and we do. Like, we are like, oh my God, mom and dad are fighting. You know what I mean? Like, we are those people. So I do not want to give off the vibe that we are this, like, you know, like we are not. But he does choose me every day. And that is incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I feel like I've learned so much in this interview. I know our listeners have also learned so much. We're going to leave information about Estate 5 if you want to know more in our show notes. And Lindsay, just thank you for your time and for sharing your story and telling us about Estate 5. I mean, I feel like I could even go into a part 2 because I'm like, there's just so much.
I know. I told you I was going to try to not be long-winded. I didn't do very great.
No, you were great.
I'll keep trying.
It's awesome. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again. Awesome.